travel long distance to come on selected weekends. Almost every weekend from November 1st or from April 1st to November 1st, we have some type of living history here. And they give up their weekends to do this for you. This weekend we have 4 units that have formed together to form the Union Battalion. They are about half the size of a regiment here at Gettysburg, but it is a large number of men, and there are 4 different companies involved in that. What they're going to do for you this afternoon is going to be something out of the ordinary. Not always do we have large units like this at Gettysburg, so it's very fortunate that this group has banded together to perform living history for you folks. What they're going to do is they're going to talk about and show you and demonstrate how and why the soldiers fought the way they did. They're going to talk a little bit about the weapons being used and how the soldiers were trained on how to load and fire their weapons, and then they're going to demonstrate a battalion firing, different ways they fired at the enemy. So when they fire their muskets, there won't be mini balls sailing through the air, of course, ricocheting off the rocks and the trees. But they are going to fire about 60 to 70 grains of black powder. It can be quite loud. So, if you, your own safety, in the nation to give of their time, it makes a job like mine very stress-free and very low-key. Now, to talk about line infantry tactics, about the weaponry, and how and why these men fought the way they did, I'd like to introduce you to a person who's been doing living history not only at Gettysburg for a long time, but also in other parts throughout the park show. Mr. Jack Foley.
Everybody hear me? All right, I'll try to talk as loud as I can. First of all, let me say a little bit about the fact that this organization portrays the 125th New York Regiment, which fought at Devil's Den on the second day of Gettysburg. They were from Orange County, New York, and were nicknamed by their brigade commander the Orange Blossoms, thus the orange ribbons. They adopted them as a sort of symbol. You might also notice I'm wearing a blue diamond. Blue diamond was the symbol for the 3rd Division of the 3rd Corps. Each corps had its own shape, and each division its own color. This made it possible to identify men on the battlefield in the midst of confusion very quickly and easily. 1st Division red, 2nd Division white, 3rd Division blue. So if you know the shape and you know the color, you know what unit they belong to. One of the questions we get quite frequently is why do they fight standing shoulder to shoulder, standing up out in the open? The answer is very simple, and you will get a demonstration of that later. It has to do with the weaponry. The weaponry consisted of a single-shot musket. It was a rifled gun. It could fire quite accurately at 300 to 500 yards, but it didn't fire very fast. So a single man with a musket could only get off maybe 2 shots in a minute. If he was firing very quickly, maybe 3. But that's not very much. So by himself, hiding behind a tree, he couldn't do very much damage. Therefore, the only way you could really deliver some firepower downfield was to line as many men up as possible in 2 ranks so you could bring every single musket to bear and to fire all at once or in various combinations, which you will see later. Because of this line tactic necessity, and you can imagine the noise on the battlefield with thousands of men firing, cannons going off, shouting and screaming from the officers, bugles blowing, drums playing, that it's very difficult to maneuver these men around the field and keep them all together. And it's critical that you keep them together or they are useless as a weapon. So the soldiers would drill in these kinds of maneuvers, which were designed to get the most number of men from point A to point B as quickly as possible and with the least amount of trouble. So they drilled 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. On Sunday they had a grand review. So they were working on this all the time. Here we have 4 companies. That's less than half of one regiment. There were usually 3 to 5 regiments in a brigade. There were 3 brigades in a division, and there were 18 divisions at Gettysburg. So do the numbers for yourself. You're talking about maybe 100 plus men here. And man in general and his subordinates had to know how to move thousands, even tens of thousands of men around. It therefore became necessary that they give an order and the men do it without thinking. You didn't have time to thinking about it. Things could change and happen very quickly. They use different formations to move into battle and away from battle depending on the terrain. If you had a narrow defile, you obviously had to have a narrow front. If you had a broad field like this, you could move on a broad front. And you had to be able to go from one to the other, turn it right, turn it left, turn it around, all under fire, and do so very quickly. So these kinds of drills, this kind of work is constant and never ceased, to the point where it happened without anything more than just the instinct of the men. See how he changed the complete shape of the formation with a single command. From a relatively narrow front to a broad front. Again, the men behind the second rank, anybody back there can't fire. So when you go into battle, you want everybody up on line to deliver the maximum firepower. Now also you can see in a line like this, if the enemy should attack you on your flank, you would be very vulnerable. So it would be very necessary to learn how to move a portion or all of that line to face the threat as it came up. Once again, it's totally changed the shape of the formation with a single command. Now they simply dress. That simply means they line up on a particular individual so they know who their guides are. With a larger organization, you would have a set of colors in the center and a guide on either end. And they would be the ones who would actually tell the men where the line should be and which way it should be facing. If you had trouble in battle, you could simply place those people, and then the men would go to them. So it was all very carefully worked out. This is called a column of companies. Each company is in its battle front, one company behind the other. This is a very efficient way to move men around the field because very few terrain features would disrupt this particular formation.
Forward! March! Battalion! Company! Halt! Halt!
Now, on paper, a company was supposed to be 100 men with 3 officers, a number of sergeants and corporals. However, by this time of the war,
Left into line, wheel!
lucky if it
Battalion!
had 5 men in the
Left
line.
wheel!
Maybe
Guide,
one
right!
a couple of sergeants. So what you're seeing here are companies that are authentically sized for this period of the war. The average regiment, which was supposed to be 1,000 men, at Gettysburg numbered about 350.
Right? Dress.
And many
No!
were smaller than that.
Hey! No, we're gonna dress left. Battalion! Left! Dress!
Of course, each officer in the process, NCO, has his own responsibilities to see to it that the formation is completed properly. The battalion commander, typically a major or colonel, will give the order. The officers in the companies will individually execute it. The sergeants will assist them. Pretty typical for the situation. I'm sure it hasn't changed since Roman times.
Forward!
This is a standard marching formation on the road,
Forward!
4 abreast, with officers and NCOs on as sort of outriders.
Battalion!
From one town to another. They would typically be followed by their wagon train. Suddenly confronted with an enemy on their right, they could move into a battle line team.
Right? Track.
Once again, keeping them together is critical because it's only together that they are, in fact, a weapon on the field.
Order! Set!
carry a musket, a cartridge box, a bayonet, a belt with a cap box on it, a haversack which contained his food rations, maybe a few personal possessions, and a canteen. On a long march, he would also carry a knapsack, in which would be his tent, blanket, his overcoat, any change of underwear or other clothing that he might have. That was his complete kit. If he could not carry it on his back, he did not have it. When you got to the officer level, each officer was given a small box in which to put some few additional possessions. Typically, they did not carry their own tents, although some did. Certainly, high-ranking officers did not carry personal gear. It was all in the wagon. But even with that, a wagon train could stretch for 20 or 30 miles, even with that level of economy. So you can imagine if you're putting 6 horses on each wagon, now you've got horses to deal with. So you've got spare horses. Then you need horses for the men to ride, the officers. And then, most importantly, you need horses to pull the artillery. And each artillery piece, single cannon, used a minimum of 12 horses. 3 on the limber that pulled it, or 6 on the limber that pulled it, and 6 more on the caisson that supplied the ammunition. The logistics of moving all of this around was really daunting. That's why it fell to this kind of drill to make sure that they knew what they needed to do. Now we're going to demonstrate how the musket is loaded, and you should get an idea about how long it takes to shoot and reload and fire one of these. Teach them they use the 9-count drill.
Low!
The gun is brought around front and the hand is put on the cartridge.
Handle! Cartridge!
Paper cartridge is pulled from the cartridge box, which contains a measured amount of powder and a lead bullet. The bullet is hollow on the inside so it will expand into the rifling when it's fired. The paper is torn open and the cartridge brought to the front of the muzzle.
Charge! Cartridge!
Powder and the bullet are put down the barrel. Start the bullet with your thumb. Put your hand on the ramrod.
Draw! Rammer!
The rammer is then pulled, swung around, and placed on the top of the bullet. The bullet is conical shaped at top, and the ramrod has a little acorn end on it to match that.
Ram!
The ball is seated and the powder is compressed.
Return! Rammer!
The rammer is returned to the channel underneath the barrel. Obviously, if you use the rammer, the gun
Prime!
The hammer is cocked with a small copper cap filled with powder, with mercury fulminate, the same thing that is in children's caps today, is placed over a small cone with a pinhole through it.
Shoulder!
When the gun is fired, I won't do it right now. The gun is fired, the hammer comes down on that, sends a small spark down that channel, that explodes the powder and fires the gun. The bullet expands a little on the base so it fits into the rifle and it gives it a spin when it comes out. Very accurate rifle.
Company!
They are, by the way, 58 caliber.
Hey!
It's a soft lead bullet, so it comes out of the gun the size of a quarter, because it continues to expand when it leaves the barrel. You can imagine the kind of wound that would make, which is why so many of the casualties were fatalities. Given the state of medicine of the day and the seriousness of the wound, a bullet entering near the shoulder would probably remove the shoulder blade as it went out.
Half! Wheel! Fire! Forward!
There were several firings that were used, and there were some very strategic and specific reasons for firing in a particular manner. The first and most obvious was to have everybody fire at once. The advantage to that, of course, is it sends a great deal of lead downfield. The disadvantage of it is you're now all unloaded, and it's going to take you 30 seconds to reload. So there are 2 times when you use the volley, battalion-side volley. Once when the enemy is very far away, and once when he's almost on top of you. And you do the very far away because you have the time to reload. You do it when he's almost on top of you because you want maximum impact just before you make contact. In between those 2 points, you're going to spread the firing out in different ways. You see a demonstration of a fire by the front rank only, and the rear rank, and by company only, and each company alternating, so you're getting a steadier rate of fire. It's a lower rate of fire, but it's ongoing all the time, so you're doing constant damage to the enemy someplace as he is moving across the field at you. Now, he's having to fire while on the move. His fire is less likely to be accurate. Your fire from a standing position is more likely to be accurate. That's why the rule, it always took at least 3 attackers for one defender as a ratio to have any hope of actually carrying the position. And then, of course, when he gets very close again, you deliver the volley, and at that point, he's probably under 75 yards away, and you can expect to make hand contact if he continues before you would have time to reload anyway. You want to do the maximum damage to it just before that happens. All right, now they're getting ready to fire. If you have sensitive ears, cover your ears.
Aim!
Battalion level bar. Every single man fired. All those bullets are going downfield. If they're properly aimed, you're going to take out that many people on the other end. Now, unfortunately, most Civil War riflemen were not very good shots. Plus, the rifle has a slow trajectory, so it tends to be a very arching trajectory. So there's actually a place at the beginning of the charge, the end of the charge, where it's more deadly than in the middle of the charge. You'll also read accounts where the officers are constantly admonishing their men, aim low, aim low. My own experience firing one of these, they kick, and that tends to raise the bullet. So you don't aim here, you aim here, and then you'll hit here. If you aim here, it'll go over his head.
Firing by
Depending on the
company!
range. This is firing by company.
Company!
Each company will fire at
Battalion!
predetermined
Commence!
sequence.
Firing! First company! Aim!
See the first company and the third company.
Fire! Second company!
Second
Aim!
one. Now fire.
Fire! Oh!
Imagine if this were 10 companies, you'd be doing it in that same time. The third company, the fifth company, the second company, the sixth company, the third company, the seventh company. So you've got firing all up and down the line and not in a ripple effect. The idea of really taking cover behind something resembling a fortification. This happened on Culp's Hill, to a lesser degree on Little Round Top.